So we're here today to talk to a good friend of mine who's also a mentor in our real estate club, and his name is Andy Teasley. And also on the call today is Tommy, a good friend of mine, Tommy Johnson, who also takes care of all the technical stuff with housemanIE.com. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my good buddy, Andy Teasley.
Howdy, y'all. How's my favorite chipmunk today?
Doing great. Doing great. Your favorite chipmunk is gathering acorns and, getting ready for the I guess for all the massive opportunities that are going to be coming along pretty soon.
The
So
release date, the end of incarceration.
exactly, exactly. So what have you been up to during quarantine, Andy? Give us a little short
Well,
rundown of your activities.
I live in Heaven's waiting room, of course, and we
Where is
lost our best 2 months of the year is February and March and April.
No, where is Heaven's Waiting Room exactly?
It's Palm Springs, California. It's the newlyweds and nearly deads, as they say.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay,
You retire and come here until you go to a better place
right
or a
now what?
warmer place.
Now what type of market do you have there in Palm Springs? Because I think a lot of people that are not familiar with that area of the country, we only know about it. And when I say we, I'm speaking as a guy who's from Tucson, Arizona. Didn't know anything about California until I moved out here, other than what I learned in movies. So all I learned in movies is that rich people live in Palm Springs. So what's the real deal about Palm Springs and that market?
Well, thankfully, the rich people live in Palm Springs and that surrounds, and people that wish they were rich and like living like they're rich live in Palm Springs and surrounds. And thankfully, rich people like to have a lot of people work for them, so there are a lot of service people that live in Palm Springs, and so we have a very diverse mix of population. Our we probably lose 30 to 40% of our population in the summer when the snowbirds leave, and anybody that can afford to get out of here for the summer goes away for 3 months. But there's enough of us still that they keep restaurants open all summer long now. They didn't used to when I was a kid. It was tough to get a hamburger if you wanted something to go out and eat in the summertime.
Really? That's
But they don't.
that's that's odd.
Well, they don't roll the sidewalks up anymore. It used to be, and in the May they rolled all the sidewalks up and down and locked the doors and went somewhere else where it's cool.
So it was like kind of like quarantine when you were a kid in
That's
a sense.
right.
So you're used to this then. Okay. So what's Palm Springs like now? So and just go on ahead and tell us a little bit about what you do as a real estate investor in the Palm Springs market. Do you primarily sell to rich people, or are you selling to the other people?
Well, I actually like the affordable housing market because in the affordable housing market, there's demand when the market's going up because starters are saying, wow, I looked at all the money dad made on the house that he bought when he was 28, and I can get out of this apartment and buy a little starter place and go from here. Or I can get out of the spare bedroom living with mom so I don't have to worry about being so noisy with the girlfriend, and we can have our own place. And then when things get contracted and the market's suffering and people can't afford that big 4 bedroom house with 3.5 bathrooms and a 3 car garage and a swimming pool, they need an affordable place to stay. So they go down a level and bump the people out that are there. And eventually it bumps people down into that affordable housing niche where I am. About 4 years ago, I started concentrating on mobile home investing because, quite frankly, I couldn't get the deals I was getting in 9 and 10, uh, just because there was too much demand and no inventory.
Okay. So so what type of investor are you, Andy? Are you the type of guy that does uh flipping, which is really popular? I know a lot of people know about flipping, but Is that the kind of guy you are, or are you the wholesaling kind of guy, or are you a buy and hold guy? What kind of investor are you?
I'm the old wrinkly kind of investor. I don't like working that hard, and I'm adverse to paying taxes. So flipping is a job, and if you concentrate solely on flipping when the market turns, as it may be doing right now, you may be that person that they talk about when they say that old yarn that when the tide goes out, you can see who's swimming without any swimming suit.
To explain that a little bit, Andy, what you mean by the fact that flipping is a job. Can you get into that somewhat?
Sure. So you run around and you buy a house and you pay cash for that house. You get a smoking hot deal for some reason. You borrow money from a hard money lender, and I know last time I got a hard money loan, it was 12% and 4 points. I don't know what the rates are now. They dipped down for a little while, but I hear they're coming back up.
Okay.
So, and then you polish it up, you invest your time and sweat and equity into it, and you turn around and you sell it. And you sell it for cash because you find a good, well-qualified buyer who goes to a bank and borrows money and hands you a big pile of cash, and you pay back your lender and you pay your costs, and then Uncle Sam comes in and he takes a big chunk of that money to support those illegal aliens that don't want to work, or people that like being on the dole, and they have to fund that train to nowhere up there in Barstow or Fresno or wherever the hell it's supposed to go.
So hold on, let me stop you right there, because I thought that, and this is what a lot of people think, is that when they get involved with real estate investing, that they're going to be in a lower tax bracket. So why is it that it's not advantageous in this sense of investing?
Because house flipping isn't real estate investing. House flipping is buying and selling inventory and getting and marking it up and making a profit and paying your 15% self-employment tax on every dollar you make.
I see. Okay. So, and that's really the key difference right there, is what you're saying, is that the difference between somebody who's just basically buying something and then reselling it for a higher price, that's really what you're saying, is that that's no different than selling cars, essentially.
Yeah. You might as
Okay.
well go flip hamburgers at McDonald's and pay taxes on that income. At least they feed you free, right?
Right. Okay. So now the reason why I started this channel, and we want to interview people like you, is because a lot of the people that are watching this are trying to figure a way out of the rat race, or at least a way to supplement their income, because, as you know, the average working Joe out there is not making nearly as much as they need to be able to survive on, let alone just one income, but just even two incomes. And then you got both parents out of the house, the kids are left alone. And if that's the case, I mean, then there's the single family, the single parent family like myself, who, in a lot of cases, just one income or no income at all. And so these are the reasons why people get involved in an activity to try to, get a piece of that American dream. So you're saying that when a person goes into flipping or into wholesaling, it's really not real estate investing. It's basically sales. So what is real estate investing? And describe what you do as a real estate investor.
Can I take a step back first?
Please. Yeah.
I want to disagree with you.
Okay.
Because when you say that most people in this country don't make enough, the problem, I don't think, is income. It's the same problem the government has. The problem isn't that they don't collect enough taxes.
Okay.
The problem is they spend too darn much money.
Okay.
So I'm going to give a good book suggestion for somebody. This would be the #1 book that everyone should read, I think. The book is called The Richest Man in Babylon.
All right. Okay.
And it refers to a lot of financial rules that have been around since Noah was here.
Okay.
And people, if you could do nothing else in your life but learn to live on 70% of what you make, invest 10%, save 10% for your old age, and use 10% for charity. Something magic happens when you use that 70-10-10-10 rule. If you start doing it, if you attempt to do it a little tiny bit, and then when the time comes, just stay on the fixed budget you are and don't spend a penny more than you make. Don't borrow anything more. And next time you get a raise, don't spend it. Keep living on what you've been making. You don't need a new car. You don't need a fleeced car. You will find, and this is something that came out in Dr. Stanley's book about the millionaire next door, most successful people, most wealthy people don't own a new car, and they never did. Maybe once. In my life, I have bought two brand new pickup trucks. And the second one I only bought because it came with an unlimited mileage, lifetime powertrain warranty, and Dodge just put a brand new engine in it, and it has 340,000 miles on it. And I will be driving that for another 20 years.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
No. Please finish your point.
Most people have the income. They just have too many wants, and they don't understand the difference between a want and a need. You do not need to have Air Jordans. You need a pair of frickin' tennis shoes so you can keep your feet off the sidewalk. You do not need to put your kids in brand new clothes. There's nothing wrong with hand-me-downs. Blue jeans from Walmart and blue jeans from Nordstrom will keep your butt out of the wind. One's $5 or $10 a pair, the other's $100 a pair. If you want to have success in life, start by adjusting your spending habits and then adjust your earning habits, keeping that 70-10-10-10 rule so you have more to spend. Then go buy Air Jordans. I mean, if Warren Buffett wants a brand new Rolls Royce, do you think that makes any dent in his income? Is that a bad purchase for someone with his wealth? No. What does he have? He's got a 5-year-old sedan in the same house he bought 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the difference between the normal everyday person and the wealthy person in life?
Right. Yeah. And so what it is that what you're really saying is that it boils down to a mentality, a way that a wealthy person behaves. And that's really the difference between somebody who's wealthy and somebody who's struggling from paycheck to paycheck. Is that pretty much?
Absolutely. You know, I've pointed this out to you and probably to 50% of the people who come to the Inland Empire Real Estate Investors Club.
Mm-hmm.
The most wealthy man in that room is typically wearing a T-shirt. Normally they're forest green. I think he bought 24 of them once upon a time, and a pair of shorts and tennis shoes. And it's probably one time in 10 when I will see him in that T-shirt and it doesn't have a hole in it.
Yeah, we know the guy you're talking about. And we love him dearly.
And he could buy and sell anybody in the room, couldn't he?
He sure could, 10 times over. And the fact is that, that's, until I actually started going to the meetings, and I remember my, first few meetings, I was the guy that you could spot who was a newbie because I was always dressed nice. Because I felt like I'm going to a place, we're going to be talking money, and I got to look like I have some money walking into the room. And then I realized, man, I'm overdressed in this room. And all I was doing was wearing, a nice dress shirt and some, nice pair of jeans, nice loafers and everything, and I'm like, man, I'm way overdressed for these meetings. So I gotta relax it a little bit to fit in. So yes. That's something that I can't stress enough to my boys, to my family, is that the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, when I first read that book, and by the way, I don't really read much of anything. I listen to everything on audio. And so if you're one of those people like me, basically do whatever you can. Listen to audio. I play a audio book while I'm working on most days. But The Richest Man in Babylon, I've always said that should be required reading for anybody who's going to graduate high school. Like, you should not be allowed to graduate high school without having read that book and analyzed it. But then when you really think about it, it really makes sense that they don't require that for high school students, because when it boils down to it, you and I both know that uh, the education system and the public school system, in a sense, I don't know what the wealthy kids are learning
It's
off in
worse.
the academies, but uh, they're basically training they're training the next generation of employees, and that's really all that the system is worried about doing, is training you for a job, but not training you to think independently, and definitely not training you on how to become a wealthy person, which is teaching you how to think like a wealthy person. Um, so without getting so deep off into that, tell us what it is that you do, Andy, that's different than what a flipper does or what a wholesaler does, because I think that really distinguishes the difference between how a wealthy person thinks, or how a working class person thinks. So, and this kind of goes back to Cash Flow Quadrant, if anybody has ever read that, another good book. But please explain what it is you do and how that distinguishes between you as an investor and somebody else who's just basically a salesman.
Okay. Um, one more book suggestion before we go there.
Okay.
You can edit the heck out of this, I'm sure. Um, Millionaire Next Door by Tom Stanley.
Okay.
Great book, and I think every high school student should have to read both the Richest Man in Babylon and the Millionaire Next Door. Uh, at this point in my career, I am a landlord. I have tenants that pay my bills. That's their responsibility. I've had great training on property management from David Tilney. I rarely talk to my tenants. They are my most important asset, and taking care of my tenants is very important to me, but I also expect them to treat my homes like they own them. They have 4 responsibilities. One is to take really good care of Andy's house and improve it. The other is to pay their rent on time. The last is to not disturb the neighbors. Don't upset the city by being a messy person. And the last thing they need to do, the 4th thing, is don't disturb my peace. Don't call Andy. I won't call you. And treat the house like you own it. If something minor breaks, fix it. Don't call me.
Okay, well, hold on a second now, Andy. I want to stop you right there, because I'm sure most people are thinking, well, hold on, if I own a property and I'm renting it out to somebody, well, naturally I'm obligated to fix everything that goes on there, and I think that's kind of what a lot of people make the mistake of thinking. I mean, I could speak personally to tell you, the experiences that my dad had renting out some property. Um, Man, if we got into that, we would go on for another 2 or 3 hours. But most people that have property naturally think that they're obligated to fix it anytime a tenant calls. So how is it that you are not are able to make those sort of demands and still rent your properties out?
So have you ever heard of a landlord who hired a property manager? Somebody like Matt Tandy, who came in and ran his property.
Uh-huh.
You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
And have you ever heard, is there some job skill that your dad didn't have? Was he an electrician, or was he not a plumber, or maybe he was lousy at plaster or putting roofs on houses? I bet there was some skill he didn't do. He hired somebody to do that, right?
Right.
So what if instead we could take both of those jobs, the property manager's job and the plumber job, and we could hire somebody to do those 2 jobs? Was there any reason that wouldn't work for any landlord?
I don't see why not.
So when I am considering a prospective tenant, I have a different attitude about a tenant. I'm hiring a property manager. I want an on-house, on-site, residential, live-in property manager. And
Okay.
by getting the right tenant, I hire my on-site property manager. And it costs me the difference between what I could rent that house for at top dollar in the market and what I rent that house for, because I like tenants that do those four things. And the agreement we have when at some point in the 90 minutes it takes me to lease a property to somebody, I get a promise from them that they are never going to leave the house and their kids are going to take over the lease once they decide to go to heaven.
Okay.
And I expect that from all of my tenants.
Okay. So basically you go into it with the concept that you're not looking for a tenant, you're really looking for a property manager to live and rent from you, live in your property and rent from you.
Right. I
Okay.
have a job to do. That's take care of my house.
Okay. That's
and
a
they
good
get a discount on their rent, just like the guy that's the property manager in an apartment building and only pays, instead of paying $1,500 for his apartment, he pays $750.
Okay. Now, how does a guy go about finding that guy? Because I can tell you, my dad, he went through quite a few people and thought that he had the right person. She was a law student and, was single mom. And I mean, things looked good on the outside, on the outside looking in, and not to, not to give the wrong impression or anything like that. But my dad was always concerned with, somebody had told him Section 8 was a good thing to get into because he's always guaranteed his money every month. And so what he ended up doing was he got the Section 8 tenant in there, and then I think the rent at the time was like $900 and he was charging like $975. So she kicked in the extra 75, and I guess they kept it quiet, between the two of them or something like that. But basically, what could have been done differently in that scenario to have avoided what happened in the end?
Okay. Well, there's two questions on my application that your dad could have added to his.
Okay.
First is, tell me what tools you have in your toolbox and what skills you have for maintaining a house. That question is on my application.
Okay.
The other question on my application is, it says, please list your attorney's name, address, and telephone number.
Okay. Now, why would you ask that question?
If they have an attorney, I don't want to rent to them.
Okay.
I don't want anybody renting for me that knows the name, address, and phone number of an attorney.
Good point.
I don't want anybody renting for me that doesn't have, if we've got grass, they better own a lawnmower, shouldn't they?
Right, exactly. Because after all, they're my property manager and my maintenance guy.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
And I wouldn't rent to a law student no matter what. Do you think did she turn out to be a legalistic pain in the butt?
I don't know about what happened on that end of the deal, but I just know how the house was left. The condition that the house was left in was not good at all. And what we gathered is that she, this is basically from a, kind of like a post analysis is walking through it, is that she had a boyfriend that she didn't tell him about, and then she also probably had a few extra family members staying there that may have taken advantage of of her kindness or whatever. But the case is that the plumbing wasn't working, and toilets were backed up, and the smell wasn't that great, and few other broken items here and there. So it was one of those deals where you pay more in repairing the damage than you actually collected in rent.
What did her landlord's two back had to say about her?
See that I don't know, so
See, there's
I would have to check back with mom on that one.
unless we want to do a whole class on how to be a good landlord. Let me tell anyone that's listening in on this: if you want to be a landlord, there's a class you must take. It is rarely offered, even before this COVID BS thing started. He only taught about once a year somewhere in the country, and it was whenever somebody could drag him out to teach. His name is David Tilney, and he will teach you how to be a good, proper property manager, and you will get the attitudes that I have about tenants, about how they're my most, and that's why they're here. And and he will teach you how to be a good property manager and how to get just good tenants. In my tenant, I want a guy who has a skill.
Mm-hmm.
When your local PhD, the guy that teaches at the university, gets laid off, what does he do? He polishes up his resume and he starts mailing it out to people. When your electrician tenant gets laid off, what's he do? He calls all his buddies that have side jobs that wanted him to do work and he was too busy and say, hey, you still need that outlet installed. And he starts looking for another job. And 2 weeks later, he's back on the job. And
Right.
6 months later, the guy sending out resumes is moving out of your house because he's finally gotten evicted.
Right. Either that or he just got another job in another city at another university, and he's giving me a 30-day notice, and now I'm looking for another tenant, scrambling around.
Yeah.
So, but I see your point. So, um, and this kind of gets into another discussion about different classes of tenants, which is something that I was completely unaware of before I joined the club. And we'll save that for another day, that discussion. But what I would like to, just as a side note, just mention that I remember my first meeting back in 2017, June of 2017. Now, it wasn't the first time I met you, but it was my first official main meeting that I went to. And I was talking to you because I recognized you from when I had met you before, a few months prior to that. And I told you that I was interested because you're really good about going to the new people and asking them what are they here for, what are they interested in. And I said, hey, my name's Alvin, and yeah, my sister and I, we want to become apartment owners. We want to own apartments. And you had already given me your spiel about apartments. And so your next comment was, well, if you want to be a landlord and you want to learn how to be a good landlord, you need to go up to Colorado Springs for this class by this guy named David Tilney. And I swear to God, Andy, I'm just brand new walking in there, and I'm still hanging on to my middle class disease, which is a word that I use a lot. And my first thought was, why in the hell would I go up to Colorado for a class on how to be a property manager? I know how to be a property manager. You put an ad in the newspaper, and then then people call, and then you take the first guy, and then you take his deposit, and then you wait for the money. And then, without a thought about the stuff that my dad had gone through. And so I took David Tilney's class because I was working on a deal last year, a deal that I talked to you about, a few other people in the club, and as part of the deal, I was going to be taking over some rental units, and I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well go ahead and take the class, And that first day of class, I think it was actually the first hour of class, there was the information in there was so different than anything that I had gotten anywhere else that I was like, okay, no wonder why Andy wanted me to take this class. Man, I wish I had done this 2 years ago. So thank you for that advice. So
you're welcome.
So let's move on to what it is Andy actually does on a day-to-day basis. Like, how does Andy, as an investor, make money? And and I'll ask you later on, Andy, about what it is that the assets that you own and things like that, because one of the things that I want to make sure that people understand is that I'm not a millionaire. I'm not a highfalutin real estate investor or anything like that. I'm still getting started in this business, but I think it's important that people get the message from people that are just like them, somebody who's starting off from the ground up, because a lot of times, the guys that you see on online and doing their videos, they've already made it, and so they're kind of like out of touch with the average guy.
I
And
think you
so
assume facts not in evidence there, Alvin.
I think so. I think so. But what I what I'm really getting at is what is it that you do on a daily basis that makes it uh, to where you're able to live without having to worry about where your next paycheck is coming from? What makes you an actual real estate investor? You had just said something about the comment that I made about the gurus online and the fact that a lot of those guys have already made it and that they're out of touch with the average person. Uh, you were
I
saying
said
something
you
about that?
assumed facts and not in evidence.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I think those guys on TV have a job. I think the guy at the front of the room at that 90-minute free seminar to learn about real estate investing,
Uh-huh.
he lives in a frickin' hotel room. He doesn't enjoy his life. He does that same pitch 2 nights a week, 6 nights a week, lives in a frickin' hotel room out of a suitcase. You think he's successful?
No,
Right.
he's not.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
He's selling, basically. He's selling an idea as opposed to actually
He's the salesman.
being an investor, is
His
what you're
job
saying.
is to get idiots to walk to the back of the room and take out their credit card.
Okay. Right. And that's actually my beef, Andy. That's why we're doing this channel, is because there's a lot of people out there who need an answer. They need a method. They don't have an understanding of what wealth really is or what money really is, and the fact that that money is just basically created, and and it's infinite. And I think a lot of people think of money as something that's finite, and you, as a creative investor and as a person who um, does deals on a sort of a dynamic level, um, it was the conversations with you that first opened up my mind to the possibilities of the fact that there are endless possibilities in how to put a deal together. And so, as I said before, um, we deal with a lot of wholesalers and a lot of flippers, and I think a lot of us are exposed to that on a daily basis, especially through TV. And so that's why it's important to have somebody like you, who is successful, explain how you got to be as successful as you are, so that people that are listening to this can follow in your footsteps and take your advice and start the activity.
Okay, so let's give them some action steps.
Okay.
Join your local real estate investor group. That's the best place you're going to get to learn. Approach.
No, go ahead.
Approach the oldest, wrinkliest, grayest, or baldest, worst dressed guy in the room, and either ask him a question, or if somebody is in conversation with him, do what I call shoulder surfing. Just be a fly on the wall and listen to the wisdom that comes out of that old great head. The young polished guy who's in front of the room going to do a presentation has probably got something to sell you. The old guy that's dressed in the green t-shirt with a hole in it probably has something to teach you. And you can probably get a big chunk of his wisdom if you're willing to sit down at a lunch table or a dinner table and use your head the way God designed it. You know, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should be listening twice as much as you talk. I suck at that, but that's kind of obvious from this interview so far.
I think I think I'm the one that actually sucks at that. But go ahead.
So that's where you start, and get some good education. Don't ever pay more than $250 a day for a weekend class. And when you're in that room, ask yourself, does this man need me? I teach a course, and I'm proud of my course, and I'm proud of my students, because over half of them go out and use some technique they learned in my class and do a deal within 60 days of walking out the door after my class. I don't need the money. Teachers that I respect, David Tilney, Peter Fortunato, they don't need the money. They're not there to teach for the money. They're there to teach because it's great fun. It's the best drug we've ever had. And when you get that panicked call from somebody 14 days after he took your class because somebody said yes to this creative deal structure and he's forgotten how to write the paperwork up, that's great stuff. And that's why we teach. And find teachers that are that way, that teach just because it's such great fun. Not the guy that lives in a hotel. Go ahead.
Well, when you say that these guys don't need the money, and you talk about them as opposed to the guy that lives in a hotel, what kind of money are we usually talking about? Because and also let's talk about the meetings for a minute, because uh, I do want to encourage a lot of people to start going to meetings, because it's the best thing for an individual to get started in the business, especially if you're serious about it. And even if you're kind of on the fringe about it, you got a job and it's real estate is something that you want to do as part of a long-term retirement plan, I would still encourage you to go to a meeting. But then there are some people who are not comfortable in that environment, or they don't know what to expect in that environment. And to not stress the importance of or the necessity of you going to a meeting, we still want to give you some more action items, and so we'll get to that in a second. But I did want to ask you, Andy, why do these guys charge? Now, what is it that they're charging as opposed to the guy in the back of the room or the guy that lives in the hotel? Because I've had people come into the meetings and they've told me things that I couldn't believe. Like I remember some couple came in a couple years ago, and they said they had spent somewhere around $50,000 or $60,000 on a real estate class, and I was blown away by that, because personally I walked in there and I was there for my first meeting. And then after the first meeting, and of course I talked to you, and then I went to YouTube and I learned a bunch of stuff. And then I went back to the next meeting and I talked to you some more. And then pretty much I was off and running after that. And I think I spent a total of about $60, because it was $30 to get into the meeting. So, so how much are these guys charging that you've learned from, that you say are the experts, and why do they charge? Explain that to me just real quick.
All right. So you put a whole lot of questions in that question. So let's.
They did people like 10.
It's going to be.
I was going to cover about like 7 of them.
So Bruce Williams had a great rule about seminars, and I think it's a good rule to encourage a newbie that's going out to a RIA. There are 2 classes of RIAs. There's the class of RIA that Inland Empire REIC is, and that LA RIA that Bill Tan's group is, and Pasadena Phoebe, and most of the Phoebes out there. They are just there teaching because they have a good heart, and they charge a reasonable fee to cover the cost of a hotel room and maybe some advertising cost, and maybe they're going to give you a little food or a drink or something. So Bruce Williams' rule was go to all that stuff you could go to, but leave your checkbook and your credit card at home. Put a couple of dollars cash in your pocket so you can pay the whatever it is, $30 to get in the door. And if you're going to go hang out in the bar afterwards, be able to cover your part of the bar tab.
Okay.
But leave your wallet and checkbook and credit card at home. Because if you find yourself in the wrong kind of meeting, and from 30 minutes into that meeting, they're pitching the table in the back of the room where you have to go buy the next class because it's a special price, and if you don't buy it today, it's going to be twice as much tomorrow. Be in a position to not have that money available, because those guys that are up there doing in that kind of a group are really, really good at getting people to take their credit card out and go to the back of the room.
Okay.
So not having your credit card or checkbook with you solves that problem. You can say, I don't have it. And since I can't get that price tomorrow, I guess I won't get it. And you may find they'll let you do it tomorrow too.
Okay.
Special just for you.
There's a certain phrase that they always tend to use to manipulate people into buying the program, and it goes something along the lines of, if you don't have the money, or if you don't think you have the money to pay for this, that's part of your loser mindset or something like that. So don't fall into that.
Yeah, that's some reverse psychology for you.
It is.
Hey, I was sitting at one of those, handing out my little cards, because I go to all the free ones that come to town.
Mm-hmm.
And I hand out little cards that I'm Coachella Valley only charges $15 for our meetup. And I hand out a little card that says, instead of doing this class that he's trying to sell you, come to our RIA. It's the second Tuesday at the Embassy Suites, and it's $15. Do that before you spend the money here.
So you go on rescue missions.
I do.
That's what it sounds like. He sounds like he's on an actual Call of Duty mission.
Eventually I get thrown out. But the last one I was at, it was so funny because the guy was just going on and on about how I was a loser and I was never going to make it in real estate. And I'm looking at this guy going, yeah, right. How much real estate do you own? Oh, I've got enough, and I can be here doing this. My tenants are paying my bills. And I'm saying, my tenants have been paying my bills for many years, and you could not give me to live in a frickin' hotel and do 2 90-minute pitches a day.
Wow. Okay. I would have. You know what, Andy? We're gonna have to take some cameras to the next time you go to one of those things, and get you on camera arguing with one of those guys. I'd love to see that. So, how many houses do you have, sir? So
Okay, so
go ahead.
Let's go. Let's answer another one of your questions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What's a reasonable amount to pay for a class? In the 70s, Jack Miller, who was a master educator and responsible for a generation of good real estate trainers and mentors and coaches, his rule of thumb was that you should be able to pay for the seminar, fly into town, pay for the hotel, and not spend over $1,000 for the weekend. Okay. That's a little tough to do now. I know that if I climb on an airplane and fly to Atlanta to take a class that's $500 or $600 for the weekend, and quite frankly, that $250 a day is a pretty good rule of thumb for an educator. It's going to cost me more like $1,500 or $2,000, but then it's 2020, not 1970, so things cost a little bit more.
Just a bit.
And I've reached that age where I like good bourbon. It tends to be a little pricey.
Okay.
But the educator, that $250 a day is a pretty good rule. What's David charging now? $795 for 3 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's his fee. And Peter Fortunato, his classes run about $250 a day. So that's a good rule of thumb.
Okay.
It's not hard and fast, but you're not going to see David Tilney or Peter Fortunato or Gary Johnston or Clyde or any of the good educators out there wanting you to pay $5,000 to spend a weekend with them on a boot camp. They don't need the money.
Well, they pitch you on a higher price when it comes down to the other stuff, like a master class or something like that, which range from like $14,000 to $60,000.
Oh yeah, but that's not the people that I want you to go see. I mean,
Yeah, nah.
That rich dad seminars that $3.99 for two people, you and your spouse or you and your friend. But the problem is on that 3-day seminar, it's all pitching the next level. If you're going
sure
to
enough.
spend a weekend with a good educator, he may have a couple of books or tapes in the back to sell, and he may pull them out for like 2 hours on Sunday afternoon. Then they get packed up, and if you want them after that, order them online.
Mm-hmm.
It's not sell, 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 sell. They're there to educate you. Why do they charge? I know the reason I charge for my class is because it does cost something to put on a class. You have to pay for the room, and you have to pay for the books and the materials. And if you come to go to one of my classes, you're going to get all the coffee you can stand. You're going to get sweet rolls at breakfast, and you're going to get lunch and something in the afternoon. And you're going to leave my class fed and educated.
And by the way, I don't know where you're getting that pizza from, but that pizza place is really, really good, by the way. So
Costco, aren't you a member?
Oh, no, not for years.
Oh man, Costco.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right.
He didn't leak one of his secrets.
The secret's out. Yeah.
Hey, Alvin, you can go in the back door without a card and get pizza.
Okay. So
just go in the exit, you can get the pizza. Anyway.
All right.
So why do we charge? Because if you get it free, you're not going to appreciate it.
Okay.
I want it to have some skin in the game, as they say. I want you to have raised that $500 and come to my class committed to actually turn that $500 investment into, $5 or $10 or $100,000 in the future.
Right.
And quite frankly, I know that my personal guarantee, and I think it's covered by anybody that I've talked about here today, if you get to the end of my class and you can come up to me and say, Andy, I didn't learn a single thing I can apply from this class.
Mm-hmm.
I want my money back. You hand me your manual and I'll give you your money back.
When is your next class, Andy?
It'll be 2 weeks after the incarceration ends in San Diego, because we were just about to teach and they shut down the venue the day before we were supposed to teach.
Yikes. I think I'll be there.
Good class. Alvin's had it. And like I said, my best brag about that class is that over half of my students do their first deal within 60 days.
And I'm definitely gonna have some of the students from the class on the YouTube channel, so we can talk to them about their personal experiences taking the class and what the type of deals that they've done. I know that I've spoken to Farah a couple times in the last few months, and she'd been working on a couple mobile home deals. In fact, I think the last time I spoke to her a few weeks ago, she was about to buy a third deal. And this is all stuff that's doable. Like, anybody can do this. And the other part of it too is that you don't need money really to get started in this business. I mean, there are a lot of ways to get started. In fact, the last deal that I was in, somebody else had found the deal, had bought the trailer for the mobile home rather for $500, and needed me to kick some money in on the rehab. So there's always that. In fact, Farah, that was the deal with her deal. So, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Let's talk about what it is that you do as far as the actual mobile home business. And I know you have a presentation that you usually do when you do this presentation at meetups, and it's kind of the scaled down version of what your class is. And I should say that I have taken the class. You do offer that anybody who takes the class can come back anytime to do a follow-up. And when I did, I brought my son with me, and you were definitely okay with that. And the one thing that I told everybody when I did take the class is that for me, it wasn't necessarily to get started in the mobile home business. For me, it was because I knew that when I was out there in the streets looking for deals, to get some wholesale money, I knew that I was leaving some deals on the table because I was just looking at a deal just one way, just as does it pencil in as a flip or as a wholesale? And if it doesn't, then just forget it and move on to the next one. And I knew that I was leaving some stuff on the table, so I thought, well, let me go ahead and take Andy's class because it's really not only just about mobile homes, but it's about creative finance. So if you can go ahead and explain how the business works, if you want to pull up the PowerPoint right now, that'll be great.
I actually have a suggestion.
Yeah.
You can edit this out if you want.
Okay.
We got to be sitting right around an hour on this thing.
Okay.
Why don't we just go into Peter's house and let's talk about the pieces of a house?
Okay.
And kind of terminate this call.
Okay.
And then we can reboot and we'll do the presentation on mobile home. That'll give you two YouTube videos that aren't too long. That way they don't lose all their interest.
Okay, that'll be cool. Okay, that's a good idea.
So after you edit that out, Jack Fullerton took my class. Everybody knows him as coach. He started the first and probably the largest real estate investing class in Orange County back 20, 30 years ago. It was called the Commonwealth Club.
Okay.
And he came and took my class and drug one of the Fenner twins along with him. And this was at lunch on Sunday. And he finally said, Andy, you're pitching this as a mobile home class, and it's not. It's really a finance class. It's a basic finance class for everybody to know what's going on and how to structure deals. And it really is. I just currently think mobile homes are a great niche. And on the next video, we'll talk all about mobile homes.
Okay.
Right now, I want to do a screen share, and I'm going to bring up Peter Fortunato's house.
Peter Fortunato's house, like his
mansion?
That?
Can you see that on your screen now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So this is Peter Fortunato's house, and I get to use it because I asked his permission.
Okay.
So these are all the different components of a house. There's growth. There's profits. There's income. There's the thrill of management. There's tax benefits. There's use. There's amortization. And the foundation of that house, the thing that holds it all up, is security. The most important technique to a successful creative deal structure is acknowledging the fact that no one needs all of those components. In every deal you do on a house, you can give up one of these components because it is better for you. If you want to have a rental house and you need to borrow some money to pay for that rental house, and you secure your loan with the deed of trust, can you see how the security goes to your lender? Can you see how part of the income goes to your lender? So the security, the foundation, that goes to your lender with the deed of trust, and some of the income goes to the lender. You don't get those, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thrill of management, because you're going to do this as a rental, guess who gets that? You do.
Okay.
Who gets the use? Who gets to live in the house?
That'd be the tenant.
The tenant. Now, does the tenant get the profit or the growth or the amortization?
No.
Now, your tenants are going to pay rent, and some of that income is going to go to pay your loan. Some of that income is going to come to you as profit, and some of that income is going to go pay expenses. One of those expenses is going to be the payment on your loan. And the payment on the loan is going to be comprised of an interest cost and a principal pay down cost. Now, principal that gets paid down is called amortization. So as a landlord is having a rental property, my goal is for my tenants who get the use to provide me with income and pay the loan off eventually So Jimmy Napier used to tell a thing. He said, we all sit around and we talk about, oh, I bought that house for $15,000. Oh, I bought that house for $50,000. Oh, I bought that house for $60,000. He said, that's all bull. We came up with a down payment. We polished the house up, and our tenants made every other payment on that house. We really only paid $500 for that house. That's the secret of my success and all long-term landlord success. We chop the things up. Now, tax benefits from owning a house. Who gets the depreciation?
Now, can you explain what depreciation is and what amortization actually is?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with depreciation. The Internal Revenue Service, in its ultimate wisdom, well, let's take a step back. The Internal Revenue Service
You sure you want to use that word?
Uses the tax code to force taxpayers to take action that the government wants them to take. Having housing available for people is something that the government thinks is a good thing. They would rather have people living in houses rather than living on tents on Sepulveda Boulevard in every state except for California.
Okay.
So because of that, the IRS has decided that buildings wear out, residential rental buildings wear out in 27 and a half years. So the value of your building, not the land, because the land doesn't depreciate, but the building, the structure, you get to take 127 and a half of that and deduct that from your income every year. Do you have to pay that? No. But if you paid, let's say you paid $275,000 for your rental house. In that case, every year you would get $10,000 in negative income on your tax return. That's the tax benefit called depreciation. It's a paper loss. So you don't write that $10,000 check, but the IRS treats it like you spent that $10,000, even though you didn't.
Okay.
That's depreciation. Now,
okay.
If you look at the word amortization, you will see in the middle of it is a word derived from the Latin morta, which is dead, to murder. So an amortizing loan is one that dies. It's generally has payments that are at a certain schedule from day one till the last day it's paid, and on the last day it's paid, the balance is zero and it has died or amortized. So as long as you think of morta when you look at amortization and realize that an amortizing loan dies at the end, you will never forget what amortization is.
Okay. And so that's what all mortgages are amortized loans. Is that correct?
No? You've never heard of an interest-only loan?
Okay. Interest-only loan, meaning from the average mortgage on a house from
most
that the average person would get for a house from a bank, right?
Regular old bank loan, mortgage, or an amortizing. The vast majority of home loans are amortizing. Yes.
Okay.
But not all of them. I wanted to. There's a distinction there.
Okay, and because there are people who will buy homes with what you were just referring to with interest-only loans. Explain real quick what an interest-only loan is.
Well, that same $275,000 rental house we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that the rent on that house is only $2,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to pay on a 360-month amortization schedule and pay all the other costs involved in running a house, you might find that you have an alligator. Instead of having positive cash flow, you have to write a check every month.
Okay.
In that situation, you might, as an investor, choose to have an interest-only loan. So you would only be paying the interest portion of the loan and none of the principal getting paid back for a term.
Okay.
So sometimes that's a good choice. Quite often, if you have let's say that you buy a house out of rental service to from a landlord,
Hmm.
and let's say that that landlord has a very low basis of say $20,000 in that $275,000 house.
Okay. Now, what do you
And
mean by a low basis?
that would be the cost that he spent to buy the house, less any depreciation that has come off of that, plus any improvements he put in.
Okay.
So if he's owned it over 27 and a half years, it would be the value of the dirt under the house.
Gotcha.
So when he sold that, he would have a major tax event and have to give the Internal Revenue Service a bunch of money when he sold the house.
Okay.
And so then whatever's left over, he gets to go invest on the open market. Instead of getting to invest the wholesale amount, he only gets to invest what's left over after he pays the taxes and the depreciation recapture.
Okay.
A better structure for him might be to sell the house to you for that same 275 sales price, but sell it to you on an interest-only loan,
Hmm.
which converts to an amortizing loan when he and the wife go to heaven. You know, one thing that happens when you inherit a house or any other thing, your basis, that's your cost allocated by the government, that it turns into the value when you inherit it.
Okay.
So if Mr. and Mrs. Old Landlord sell you the house on an interest-only loan, I'm telling you something that's wrong. Let's take a step back. That's wrong, by the way.
Okay.
So let's not talk about step up in basis. Let's just talk about income for him. So he can sell it for $275, pay his depreciation recapture, pay his capital gains tax, and then be able to go out with his $175. I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt.
Okay.
And go invest it, right?
Right.
And if he could make 6% on the 175, that's what he's going to make. But if he was to sell you that house for $275 with an interest-only loan at 6%, then he would have 6% on $275 because he wouldn't have any of those he wouldn't have the taxes due yet. They wouldn't be due until he got paid.
Okay.
And he's never getting into that capital until the end of your loan. In the meantime, he's got his whole $275 invested, and he's making money on probably another $6,000 a year that way.
Okay. So the advantage to the homeowner who's looking to retire and get out of the game, but he still wants to have some form of income coming in. He doesn't want to just cut himself off at the knees. And he doesn't, if he sells, he's going to have all the taxes to pay. He's going to have, well, the depreciation to repay. And then he's going to have, obviously, any of the fees that are attached to the sale. And then there's also a capital gains tax, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
That's correct.
S-
Yeah,
uh,
all
so
those are going to take away from that money before he gets to start investing it.
Okay, and so that's why you're saying he could very well sell it for 275, but end up with actually walking away with 175. But if he were to do a sale, if I were to say and say, like, I'm a guy, I'm renting from him, maybe my credit's not the best in the world, but I'm a good, reliable renter. I paid on time. If I couldn't pay on time, maybe once or twice, I at least communicated with the guy, kept the house looking nice, grass cut, didn't call him for minor bullshit or anything like that. Basically, he would have every incentive in the world to go ahead and have a conversation with me. And the advantage to him would be that if he sells it to me at 275 and he were to carry the note, is what you're saying, essentially, right?
Yeah, interest
And
only note at 6%.
okay, so the interest only note at 6%, and the interest only just basically means that we take 6% of the total amount of 275, break that down to see what it's going to be on a month-to-month basis on a 12-month schedule, and that's
Right.
really what I'm coming out of pocket on every month, right?
Yeah, so you'd pay him $16,500 a year,
Okay. And
and he would still keep that 275 for future. But in the meantime, he's making 16,500 on his 275.
okay. And so and a lot of times this is a way that somebody can either buy themselves a property for their family to get started with property ownership, but
Tommy, is the
also
bandwidth screwing up on my end or yours?
it's looking a little fuzzy on my end as well. I'm still recording though. I still hear you. If it's messing up, it'll shut us down like it did before. So anyway, what's that? Okay.
It was
So
on both ends. I heard it. I heard it on both ends.
okay. We still good?
Okay.
Yeah,
You're
we're
back.
good. We're still good.
So
Ain't
with what
technology grand?
oh yeah, yeah. At least it allows us to be able to connect while we are in prison still. So can't complain too much, but we will. Anyway, so basically what you're saying is that this is a way that a person can actually get into home ownership if they've been a renter all their lives and they actually want to start owning a property and be able to get into the deal. Now it may not be ideal at the beginning because it is an interest only, but what Andy is basically saying is that an interest only loan at least gets your payments down to where it's something that you can actually afford. Now, if you're using that as a way to get a house to actually use it as an investment, well, then what you're doing is you're making sure that whatever that payment is that you're paying out every month in the interest only loan is lower than what you're going to collect in rent. So if you've got a difference between, say, you're paying uh, 1,500 a month on the interest only loan. I'm just throwing this out of my butt basically, but you're paying 1,500 a month on the interest only loan, but then you're turning around and you're renting out the property for 2,200 a month. That's a pretty good deal. So you're cash flowing $500 every month, and I don't know anybody that wouldn't want an extra $500 every month. I mean, I can't think of a single person who wouldn't want that. So that's a way to get started in the business if you're trying to figure out how can I actually get a loan. I can't go down to the bank. My credit's not good, but heck, my credit with my landlord is really good. And a lot of us understand what credit really means. Like
That
you
also
can
gives you
have
leverage.
credit with the institutions, or you can have credit in the streets. And if you have credit in the streets, sometimes that's way more valuable than having credit with the institutions because your landlord is credit in the streets. So let's fast forward to go back to where we were before. Now, Tommy, you had something to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Tommy?
I was saying that pretty. Yeah, I'm here. I was just saying that pretty much gives you leverage when you have that extra $500 coming in, especially on something like that.
Well, that kind of gets back to what you were saying before, Andy, about the importance of being able to uh, live with your income at 70% of your income. Now, if you're making an extra $500 a month, you've just increased your income by 500. So that means essentially that you've got an extra, what is that, 150 a month to actually put away now to actually live on to increase your monthly
I
budget.
think you have more. I think you have more than that. If you was already surviving out the original 70%, you don't have to spend that any money out of that $500.
Yeah, I actually said that a little wrong, but you're right. You can you
Hey,
can either take 150 out of that and put the rest away, or you could just put the whole $500 away. What was that, Andy?
you could do either one, but um, you have to focus on living life too, and if you diligently do the 70-10-10-10 rule, spend the 70. There's not a thing wrong with spending that 70.
Okay.
Enjoy life. Go have a nice meal out with the wife. There's not a thing wrong with that. But do it. Diligently put away the 10 for your old age. Have the 10 for investing it, and do the 10 for charity. It's a very important component to living a good life in our society. You will find that if you do that, it will help you immensely. As we start, as you said earlier, there are people who don't understand that the pie is infinite, and if you think that the pie has only so many slices in it, and if you give it away, you don't ever learn that the more you give away, the more you get. So understand, the pie is infinite.
Right, and that's actually one of the concepts, Andy, that was the most interesting to me, getting into understanding the wealthy mindset, because I worked a lot of years just working my job and then just doing whatever business I could start on the side, just hustle, and I never had the actual mindset of a wealthy person until I started getting around you guys and actually paying attention to a lot of these things that you talk about. And so that's something that we can't stress enough, is the importance to give that 10%, because it always comes back, and it's part of a universal law that, again, we're not taught this stuff in school, but it is taught in The Richest Man in Babylon. Is that right?
It is. It's taught in life.
Cool.
So basically, to wind up a little bit, anytime you come to a transaction, if you want to get into investing, can take this house and understand that by giving different pieces of the house away to different people, you can benefit your life. If you're really, really good at finding good tenants and really, really good at managing those tenants, you might do nothing else with this house but take the management out and get paid from the owner who's getting the other benefits to deal with the person getting the use. I mean, our friend Matt Tandy, that's all he does. He manages houses for people. He collects rent, manages tenants, takes care of houses, and he gets paid well for doing that job. If you're terrified of managing your own houses and you don't want to go take David Tilney's class and learn how to manage your tenants, then give the management to somebody else. My friend Peter Fortunato, who made this house, hates managing tenants. So he often partners up in a house, and he will give a piece of a house he buys to a good property manager for the management. You take care of keeping it occupied and maintained and deal with the tenants, and you get some percentage of the ownership of this house. You can chop up that house just like the pie. It can be cut up lots of different ways. You may have a wealthy friend who has a big W-2 job and a great ability to borrow money from banks, unlike some of us who are unemployable. And they provide the money to buy the rental house, and they get some of the amortization, and maybe you keep all the income, but they get the tax benefits. When you're just starting out and you're making very little money, does that depreciation write-off benefit you as much as it benefits somebody who's maybe a banker and is willing to go out and do a bank loan and borrow the money and fund your house and partner up with you? If you give him all the depreciation out of the partnership, it doesn't cost you anything. And it benefits them highly because they're paying a big tax rate. So look at the house, look at all the components, and understand that by knowing all the different components, there are a lot of ways that you can structure deals going forward.
Now, when we're looking at this diagram, the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is the security. And I noticed that the security is right on the bottom where the foundation of the house would be. So can you explain the meaning of security and how that fits into the overall picture?
Well, security is the foundation of the deal, and it's the foundation of the house. The house won't stand without a good foundation, and the house deal won't stand without the foundation of good security. If you're going to go to your big W-2 friend and get him to go get the money so you can buy this rental house together in a partnership, he needs security. He needs to know that his money's safe. So in the case where you're borrowing money from a big W-2 investor, they're going to record, in California we call a deed of trust. In other states it's called a mortgage. But what that does is that says that the lender has to get paid off if this house is ever sold. So the security in California would be represented by a deed of trust that staples that note to the house.
Okay.
So, and that's the reason it's the foundation. It's the most important component.
Okay. So let's just take, so I know I have some friends and I know people who they'll have a like one of their kids or a niece or nephew who's a pro athlete. And this happens a lot where pro athletes, they they make earned income, and they wonder why, after an athlete's done playing, I think on the average they say like 3 years after they're done playing they're completely broke, and that's usually because they haven't developed the mindset of an investor. They've been making a lot of money as an athlete, which is earned income, and this is why they ended up going broke, because they don't develop a system to make money as an investor. So if they have family members who are out there, they're watching this video and they can go out there and they can find deals, this would be something that as a pro athlete or as anybody, as a family member, every family's got that one family member. I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of family you come from. Every family has at least one or two family members who's successful, who has good credit, who's making really decent money. Like, as one of those family members, you would be doing that person a lot of good to help them with their tax problem from making a lot of money, because people who make a lot of money, especially earned income, they have tax issues. So Andy's solution to that is look at this diagram and tell me if you think that there's somewhere where you can find a deal on a house, and ask that person who needs a tax benefit if they would be willing to go in with you on that deal. So these are certain ways that these are ways that people can get into deals, because Andy, if you would please explain what Peter Fortunato's breakdown is, how he looks at deals and how he looks at money, because he says all the time, like, you don't need money for real estate. You're just basically exchanging things. Could you elaborate on that a little more?
Sure. Well, somewhere earlier I had this thought and I didn't figure out a place to interject it. You asked what I do most of my time. I spend a lot of time thinking, because real estate is always going to be a thinking man's game, not a running man's game. So if you invest time in thought, and I have a whole presentation on the thinking chair, we might do that someday.
Okay.
So you don't need cash. You need to be able to divvy up the pieces of the house. If you are really good at knocking doors and finding deals, and you have a friend that's a high W-2 person like your pro athlete, who doesn't necessarily realize that he's going to be broke 3 years after he gets out of there, his body's worn out, he probably didn't get the education in college that he should have gotten so he can actually go have a career after being a pro athlete. And he really needs somebody who can invest wisely for him. And let's assume that this person has a 40% tax rate. So for every $100 of tax benefits you can get him, you're going to save him $40 in taxes that he's got to write a check to the IRS for every year. So if you can find the deal, and maybe you are interested in just income today, you want to put bread on your table. And what's important to you is paying your grocery bill and your rent and putting gas in the car. You're at that point in your life where that's your main concern. So you go to your wealthy friend and you say, okay, I've got this great deal on a rental house. I know how to manage it. I know how to get a good tenant. Let's buy this rental house together as partners. And I'll take care of the management, and I need the first, and we're going to pay the cost of the house out of the cash flow, and I'm going to get 3/4 of the net cash flow, or I'm going to get all the cash flow. Whatever you can negotiate with your partner that's fair. And I'm going to give you all the depreciation, which is going to get you 40 cents on the dollar. And if we pay, let's say we paid $300,000 for the house, and $275,000 worth of that was house and $25,000 was dirt. That means you're going to get $10,000 every year in additional depreciation that you can write off on your taxes. You're going to get to write off the interest we pay on the loan. But the amortization, we're going to split. So, or maybe not. Maybe I take all the income, and then when we decide to split this thing up in the future, you get all the upside in owning the house.
And what does that mean, the upside?
Well, let's say we buy this house today for $300,000, and then 20 years from now, we sell it for $600,000. There's $300,000 in capital gains profit there, which is taxed very nicely according to the IRS. The IRS does a great deal on capital gains tax as opposed to earned income, like, you know, throwing a football and catching it, which is taxed at the highest rate. Capital gains is taxed at a very low rate. Okay. So this
so what are these rates, Andy, just by the way?
Oh, it's not important. They change drastically.
Okay.
You know, it's one of those numbers that you start sticking numbers like that in this kind of a thing, and then it's obsolete.
Okay.
It's like you listen to some of the great note classes out of the 70s and 80s, and it's talking about 18%, and how that's routine, and some people have to get 28%. And those numbers just blow everybody's mind. And the techniques work, even though our interest rates now are substantially lower. So tax rates change. The type of taxes are always going to, well, I can't imagine that the type of taxes won't be bonused the same way they are. Remember, the IRS wants to train taxpayers to do what the government wants them to do. And providing houses is something the government wants done. So they reward us for doing that.
Okay. So basically, the person who's out there in the street, the person who's, you know, not consumed with, you know, the career or the pro athlete career or the, you know, the professional career, the person that's making all the money, the other people in the family, you could do that person a lot of good by helping them not only secure their future and secure your own future, but make sure that the money that pro athlete is earning right now is basically, I guess the best way to say it, you're giving them an opportunity to save money on their taxes. I mean, that's really the bottom line. So they're turning that earned income into sort of a passive income tax benefit. And there's a lot of stuff that we talk about that, quite frankly, you know, the average person that's watching this video, that's a beginner, is not going to necessarily understand. And the one thing that I can't stress enough is that the language of investing is a language. It's a language in and of itself. And just like any other language, you can learn this language.
Isn't wealth a language as well in a lifestyle?
Say that again?
Isn't wealth a language in a lifestyle?
I guess so. You could say that.
So if we're talking about NBA players, they're not equipped to live the wealthy man's lifestyle. They're equipped to live the rich man lifestyle. So they have a different mindset when it comes to just spending.
That's absolutely correct. And amazing. Think about the amazing benefit you could be to that. It's that pro athlete relative of yours, if you could convince him to live on, we're not talking about someone who's going to have a regular career here. We're talking about a firecracker. It's a shooting star career.
Right.
They're not going to be making that money for 30 years. They're going to maybe make it for 5 if they stay healthy. So they don't need the 70-10-10 rule. They need to learn to live on 30% of what they make and take the other 70% and invest it. Because if you take what they're earning and divide that by take what they're earning annually and then figure out their life is going to be 5 years as a pro athlete, and take 40 years of life. So you're going to take an eighth of you need to live on an eighth of that money. And then you'll have that income for your entire life if you invest it well. And if you can teach that person, that's a great benefit for them.
Okay.
And I agree.
Okay. So just to wrap it up, there's this diagram. If you study this diagram and you take some time to think, and you really want to get something going in your life and start investing and start looking for deals, there's a lot of deals out there. There's deals everywhere. I remember when I first started, and I couldn't find a deal to save my life, so I thought. And then just the more and more I got into it, I started finding deals, and now I have more deals than I can handle. And so it's sort of the thing to where you have to be consistent about what you do, and you have to understand the type of person you are and not try to go against who you are. Find your niche, and no matter what you do, just basically do it with some consistency, because if there's no consistency, then you're going to struggle through that time until you get consistent. And I can speak to that 100%. Andy, what did you do to get started? And like, basically, what was your, when you did that first deal, like, what did that require you to do just to get that first deal?
You realize you're talking some old history here.
Oh. Maybe let's fast forward to your first mobile home deal, or I'll tell you what, let's save that for the next one.
There you go.
And then we could just go ahead and wrap it up now.
I think we've covered an awful lot of good stuff. I think that we've given some good book assignments, and I think if people actually take those to heart and go read those books and learn the messages that are there,
okay,
I think those will be very good for people, beneficial. If I was to tell somebody, well, obviously mobile homes are what I would teach them today, just because of where the market is, but where it's going to be in 6 months, I don't know.
Okay.
So.
And by the way, Andy, how many houses or mobile homes do you own, if you don't mind me asking?
Enough.
And so, and do you actually own these properties?
Personally, I'm a pauper. A great lesson that a wise man taught me, or tried to teach me, when I was 13 or 14 working in a snack bar, was that ownership was not important. What was important was control. So I own that 2008 Dodge pickups in my name, but I think that's the only thing on the planet titled to me personally. So, okay. And you'll find that most wealthy people, and I don't know if I count as wealthy or not, you won't find Warren Buffett's name on a bunch of property tax deeds. I think you'll probably find his name on his personal residence and maybe the house they have at the beach over here in California, but I doubt any other real estate he owns is titled to him, and those might not be either. So I have a good life. I do what I want to do. If I want to go drink expensive bourbon in a bar, when they open them up again, I can certainly sit down at the bar and I can afford to pull out enough money to buy what I want to buy. My wife and daughter are always bitching at me come birthdays and Christmas because I generally go out and buy what I want, and I don't want much. So I'm comfortable.
Okay. And you would let me ask you this then, Andy. Would you, if I were to say, hey, Andy, could you buy me that Ferrari over there? Would you be able to do it?
Could I go buy a Ferrari tomorrow? I could.
Okay.
Would I buy one for you? No. Would I buy one for me? No. Can you tow anything with it?
That's a good answer. So that, in fact, that answer is thorough enough. So I appreciate it. So, Tommy, do you have any closing questions for Andy?
No, I don't. The man can buy a Ferrari, so he's pretty comfortable.
Okay, all right, yeah. I think anybody that can buy a Ferrari can. I think we can honestly say they're doing very well for themselves. But the
I
one thing
agree.
that we do
What
want to
scale would you like, Alvin?
What's that?
What scale?
Oh, what scale? The 10% scale.
Okay.
That'll be fine. Yeah,
Red box size.
I'm not picky. So Andy, I want to thank you very much for being on the show today, interview podcast, if you will. We just basically wanted to give some people some tips on how they get started, some understanding about what an investor is and what investing is. And we're going to have you on again in the near future. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's fun sharing with folks. So I can't wait to see this come out.
All right.
I can't
Same
either.
here. All right.
That makes three of us.
There we go.
Okay, cool. Take it easy. Thank you very much. And we will talk to you soon.
All right, Alvin.
Definitely.
Have a good day.
All right.
Have a good day, fellas.
All right.
Oh, that was a long one, Alvin.
So